Chapter 3 Holographic Echoes. The robot in my mind isn't just a processor of logic, it is a repository of data. In the 23rd century world where it originated, information is the ultimate currency. To help me navigate the present, the robot began to project holographic echoes, vivid, flickering windows into my own past that allowed me to analyze my life with the distance of a stranger. Looking back at these echoes as a married man of 27, I see them not as lost memories, but as the raw data that program me for the life I lead now. The nerves of youth and Valentine's Day. The holographic flicker to a sunny afternoon by the school gazebo. I am 9 years old. Full of raw and robotic courage, I see myself confessing feelings to Casey Dunn. It was a moment of pure innocence, yet even then the logical analysis was taking notes. I had saved a week worth of lunch money to buy her a Valentine's necklace. I remember the anticipation, the calculation of every cent saved, only for the data to turn cold when she didn't wear it. I felt a surge of anger, my first realization that my logic could not always predict the choices of others. Looking back now, I don't see this as a romantic loss, but as a lesson in my vulnerability. It taught me that giving to someone you love is a risk. A theme that would repeat years later when I stood in Westone Mall trying to choose a ring for my wife. First love and share paths. The echoes shift to a school bus en route to Elsha Beach. I see my younger self with Nissan Williams, the first kiss that signified the beginning of a new era. Later, the blue light of a BlackBerry Messenger screen displays I love you messages with Chanel. As a married man, I view these echoes with respect for the boy I was. These relationships were the beta test for my heart. They taught me how to communicate and how to handle a diversion of paths. My bond with Chanel eventually transformed into a deep, platonic friendship. But the holographic dims as it reaches 2020. Our paths move in a different direction, leaving certain things unspoken, but providing the robot with the necessary data on how to handle closure and change. Stigma and humility. The data shifts to my high school years at Wolmer's Boys School. A hologram shows me participating in the PAD program for school lunches. Back then, I wore that status with a burning shame. I felt it was a stigma that hindered my aspirations. Now the robot filters that memory with 2020 hindsight. In the face of hardship, one finds strength, and in the embrace of humility, one discovers grace. That Maga boy on the PAD program was being forged into a man who would be broken by the financial struggles of a new life in Tennessee. System Era Marine Park, the most painful echo. The one I forced the robot to archive in high definition is the day at the Nagahead bus stop I see my brothers, Shakeito and Shakim, walking with me. I see my own eyes vigilant and observant, spotting two suspicious figures at Marine Park. I flagged the threat. I told my brothers, but when the thieves attack with a knife, the robot's logic failed to transition into action. I stood paralyzed in a system error while my younger brothers, who looked for me for protection, fought the battle themselves. I see disappointment in their eyes as we walked away. The moment of stillness is my greatest regret. It's the reason I strive so hard to lead my family spiritually and physically, to ensure that if a threat ever approaches my home again, the robot will not just observe, but the man will act. Chapter 4 Life in Review. As the robot matured, the sheer volume of data is collected required a more sophisticated method of processing. It was no longer enough to just record holographic echoes. I needed to analyze the patterns, the period of my life, transition through high school into the early adulthood. Became what I call a life in review. It was a time of debugging the errors of my past while trying to build a stable operating system for a future that felt increasingly distant from the hills of St. Anne. Ulmeri and refinement. Entering Ullman's Boys was a significant upgrade to my environment. It was a place where tradition met ambition. And for a boy from the PAD program, it was both an honor and a battlefield for my self-esteem. In this review, I see the Maga boy standing among the future leaders of Jamaica. My logic told me that to belong, I had to excel, but my wounded runner instinct told me to stay quiet. I learned to navigate this duality by becoming a student of the game. I analyzed my peers, the teachers, and the social hierarchies with the precision of an algorithm. I realized that my value didn't come from the lunch I could afford, but from the intellectual and physical potential I was beginning to unlock. The silence of the introvert. During these years, the introvert persona I wrote about in my poetry became my primary defense. I began to prefer science and silence over the drain energy of small talk. I'm an introvert, please don't text me. I'm observing, I'm listening. This wasn't shyness, it was data collection. While others were talking, I was recording. I was learning how to identify the vultures, snakes, and sharks in my environment. This review of my social interactions taught me that solitude was my driver, the fuel that allowed me to survive the noise without losing my own signal. Debugging the Marine Park incident. The system error at the Nagahead bus stop remained the most difficult file to review. For years, I replayed that moment I froze while my brothers fought. In this chapter of review, I begin to understand why it happened. My eternal logic was programmed for non-confrontation, a peace at all costs. Mentally, I had cultivated to survive a complicated childhood. I realized that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the ability to handle it. This realization was the first step in rewriting my code. I decided that I would never again let the robot logic override the man's responsibility to protect. This review turned my greatest regret into my greatest motivation for the leadership I would eventually need as a husband. The butterfly effect of dreams. As I reviewed my life up to the age of 23, I started to see the butterfly effect in action. Decision to save the necklace for Casey Dunn, first kiss with Nishan, the messages with Chanel. These weren't just random events. They were the training ground for my emotional intelligence. They were preparing me for the moment I would meet a woman in Tennessee and have to decide if I was ready to lead. The review revealed a clear pattern. I was a fighter with no end goal, a ship with no oars, set to sail. I had the logic, I had the data, and I had the drive. All I needed was a destination. The review was over. It was time for the climatic decision that would lead me across the ocean to the volunteer state.